Jesse, are you with me, buddy?
Says we're live on my end.
Yeah, it does say. I didn't get the thing from Jesse, but I'm sure we're good there too. Oh, there we go. We are good now. Okay. Welcome to Hopeifiers. My name is the Acapellist. I am with the elusive Scott Sweetman. We can't see his face because he's like a celebrity. He doesn't want to be recognized on the street. Well, I guess then you shouldn't have a picture up, eh, Scott? That logic doesn't work. Anyways, we are here to discuss hope, to build up hope, to encourage, to support. Those are the things we want to be here so that you leave this after having a discussion with us and you feel more hopeful. You feel more optimistic. You feel more love. You feel more compassion. Scott, can we pull that off, buddy?
Amen. That's wonderful. Well said, Al. You bet.
All right.
I think we're going to shoot for a very tight show tonight, right? We're going to.
Yes.
And you were talking about something that I hadn't heard about, and I'm really interested in hearing about it because it's something that's really important, especially right now, given all the stressors we've got going on, given that people are locked at home. And you told me this program is called the Safe at Home. Did I get that right?
You did get it right. Yeah, it is actually, I found out about it through the Southern Alberta Council of Public Affairs, the SACPA folks. Mm-hmm. They have shows on a regular basis that I watch. And she was on last Thursday's show. And what's different, her name is Nara Fadozzi. What's different with their approach, Safe at Home, and it's a pilot project centered out of Claresholm to support rural, which is great because, there's resources in the city, but out of town, sometimes they don't translate. They don't happen, right? So Exactly. Safe at Home is a little bit different, that if there is a family that is in crisis where there's a potential for violence to ensue, then the man, the perpetrator generally is going to be the man. They agree to move to a different location so that the wife and children can carry on their own, carry on. Sheila Ferguson says, hi guys. Hi Sheila. Thanks for joining us.
So Sheila's going to have to join us some night.
Yeah, exactly. Sheila will come on and talk with us.
You bet. So you were saying, the abuser, whoever that is in the relationship, and we have to realize that we live in a time where it may not be a man and a woman, right? I mean, it could be two men, it could be two women, it could be three, whatever the situation is.
Whoever is using violence or has the potential to use violence is moved out. It goes somewhere else so that the people who are experiencing violence can live violent free, can have liberty over that violence.
I think it's a great idea because we know that staying at home, and I know when I've been treated medically for things, that the ability to stay in your own home when you're sick is really powerful, and it really helps with the healing process and not feeling alienated or even more victimized, right? I just wonder how they go about negotiating, and I assume there's some negotiation process rather than force, how they get the abuser to say, okay, I'm an abuser, I'm going to move out.
Well, I would suggest in most cases it occurs after the violence has occurred, and then there's legal proceedings. There's RCMP involved. There's certainly a strong incentive that they need to correct their behavior in order to not go to jail, basically, or before the courts. I think so that there's an incentive for the person to be engaged in that process. I think you can do it without the violence having to happen. I think it could be preventative in nature, but anyways, I think it's just great that there's another level of resources, right? Our women's shelters, like our shelters that we have for women and kids fleeing violence, they're like over capacity, right? There's not enough space for them. And for somebody who lives out of town, well, that makes it even more challenging to connect with an agency in Lethbridge when you're living in Claresholm or Staveley, or that's where you're at, right? So anyways, I think it's a great idea and just another approach, another way to help keep people safe.
Rural communities too suffer from the stigmatization, because it's such, often everyone knows everyone and everyone knows everyone's history and everyone's business. I grew up back when we had party lines, and some of our younger viewers probably wouldn't even understand that concept, or be really freaked out by the idea that two different families in two different places shared the same phone line, right? You could lift the plunger up and hear what the other person was saying. But I know from, growing up in Bentley, yay, Bentley, shout out to my hometown of Bentley, Alberta, that there's I won't say it's stronger, but there's more an awareness if somebody is suffering in a situation or has suffered a traumatic event. And often there's a lot of shame attached to that. Like in a city, you can sort of disappear. And I know that in rural communities, often in the case of domestic violence, the abused will often have to go to a big city center for two reasons. One, you pointed out, that's the only place their service is available. And two, they're more anonymous there.
Yes.
So coming out of Claire's home, I think is a really brave and really important initiative for rural communities to be looking at it.
Now, for our viewers, Scott had mentioned about the party lines. Well, also on those party lines, you'd have these things, these phones that look like, let me just bring it up here. Where's the rotary phone? Picture of rotary phone. Here it comes.
I don't even know if my daughters know what a rotary phone is.
Exactly. So these things here, you would spin that little dial and it'd go, and then the plunger thing is the handset part. Thank you. Yes. Hey, Scott, while I'm thinking of it, did I ever tell you about how the Star Wars movies come 4, 5, 6, and then 3, 2, 1? Did I ever tell you that?
No.
In charge of scheduling, Yoda was. Sorry,
that's funny.
I haven't used my Yoda voice in a week or two, so I had to throw something in there, buddy.
Well, that's good. Pull that out of the repertoire and run it up the flagpole. See how it goes.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I was thinking back to something that jumped into my mind when you're talking about this, and I remember I took a long drive with an RCMP officer that was really, and I won't say his name because he was involved in the internet and policing the internet, which is how I got to know him and work with him. And particularly, he was focused on pedophiles and catching pedophiles and then tracking them down in real time and space and apprehending them and bringing them to justice. And he was famous in Western Canada for his work in that. And he had lived, I found out during this long drive we took together, that he had lived up north, and he had lived with an Aboriginal community in the north. And he said they had a really interesting solution there. We're talking about, okay, so you arrest a pedophile and they go through the system, they end up in jail. How are they treated, when they're re-released into the community? What assurances are there? And, really not a lot of positive things to report with rehabilitation and how that turns out. And I'm not saying or trying to offend anyone out there, but that's the conversation we had. But he said in this community, they had a really interesting thing, and it was shame-based rehabilitation. And so if somebody was caught, like let's say committing domestic violence against their partner, they would be brought in front of the community, and they would have to stand up and they would have to admit what they had done to the whole community.
Wow.
And they would have to look everyone in the eye and say, whatever the deal was. And it's one thing to lie to your partner, maybe, who doesn't want to leave you because there's kids involved in finances and all those things. But it would be another thing to, look your whole community in the eye and, make up excuses and make up lies about why you did this or why you were continuing to do this. And he said that he saw didn't know about rehabilitation, but a lot of changes in behavior. And I thought it was so interesting because we look at shame as a very negative thing. And, even offenders, we're very careful in our society to protect them from shame. And it was just really interesting in this conversation that I had with this really well-known law enforcement officer who had decades in the force and was, had seen it all, been there, done that. And the hope that he really saw was in this community rehabilitation where people had to face their shame, sorry, go ahead, Al.
I'm just going to jump in here, Scott. I love that. Like, I get what you're saying. And I think part of that process, that the healing part comes, is this person, and for them to be violent for somebody else, they've experienced trauma and violence in their life, right? So for them, that's an opportunity for them to reveal their trauma, to express their trauma, and from their community get the supports they need, right? This person who I don't think there's a person alive who uses violence who says, "Oh, that's a good choice." I sure am glad that when I was on my mother's breast, looking in her eyes, and she was telling me, "Yeah, you should be a rapist and a murderer," right? That it didn't happen, right? So the healing that person could come from that, revealing the hurt and pain in their life, the suffering in their life, that kind of led to the path that led to them taking fists or feet or those kind of things, being violent. So
I think in that confessional sort of way, and I know that a lot of traditions have a confession as part of gaining redemption or rehabilitation. And part of this process that he explained to me was after they had confessed to what they had done in a very honest and direct way, then they had to ask forgiveness of the community, and knowing full well that the community might forgive them, but the community would never forget, and that would be a burden that they would have to bear. And that was sort of prevention, right? Like before somebody goes out and tries to solve an argument or a disagreement or vent their frustration in a physical way, knowing that their community is going to find out about it, knowing they're going to carry that with them forever, I can see that as being as a genuine deterrent.
Yeah. Well, I think also just the having a real conversation, right? That wouldn't have been a pleasant conversation for anybody, but it sure would have been a genuine and real conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you think I don't know where I read this even, but it was basically about education in Denmark, I believe it was, and they were talking about that. What they'll do is, if they have, let's say, kids are there fighting, get into a fight, this is like a teaching moment. So everybody is involved in this process. Jimmy, why were you hitting Sarah? Like, how did, and then they have a conversation about how they feel and how they acted. And then everybody kind of gets a healing from that, a way to expel that this is not the way we do things around here, right? Where no hitting, no punching, just like, let's talk, let's get this out that way. So I think that's a valuable thing too.
I think if we expand the discussion, and we need to bring this around to hope before we end today, Al. But
yes, we do, Scott.
I think if we expand it a little bit, not just domestic violence, but violence against anyone or anything that's different has always been a way to maintain control in our society, and sort of the dominant or the accepted group uses secret violence, right, to control those that are perceived as different, those that are perceived as being unusual, outside the norm, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that, anytime you can pull that into the light, and I think that's going on with the whole residential school issues right now. I know that, people in gay and lesbian, transgender, two-spirited community have also gone through, bringing their suffering into the light. And
hey, Scott, I want you to carry on with this theme, but I just want to say, two-spirit, isn't that a much more elegant way to express? Like, it's supposed to GBLPT, that thing, two-spirit covers everybody, and it's not so defined. I love that. Carry on.
I confess that every time I get that figured out, somebody adds more letters to it. And basically, I was talking to a guy from Quebec earlier today, and everything that's going on in politics in the world and whatever, and we were talking about where's the solution, where's to all of this, and the solution is that really I think we just stop labeling everyone and accept that we're all different, and that we don't need to pigeonhole people. We don't need to, say, oh, you're this, I'm that.
Right. We
What?
don't need more reasons for division. We need more reasons for connection, right?
Yeah. And I think people can say, oh, you're a couple of white dudes, middle-aged white dudes, so you don't get it. You're not woke. Okay, maybe we're not woke. But what we both would really like to see in our heart is a society, a world where people aren't identified by their race, religion, color, creed, and that you don't have to explain I'm this or I'm that. Just
Oh, hey, Scott, you see my shirt? It says a
uh,
call to men.
nice.
Yeah. So a call to men is this organization that is looking to end violence, end racism, end sexism, end those things. And basically what their model is to think of the most vulnerable person. And for them, that's a Black trans woman. That's the most vulnerable person. Generally, they don't live past about 32 years old.
Wow.
Because life is hard and they get beat or killed or commit suicide.
Yeah.
And so they're saying if you can make a safe environment for that person, that's a safe environment for all of us, right? So it's a very interesting approach, right? That you like, as opposed to just say, oh, well, the majority are this, so that's the level we're going to provide. Well, what if you can provide that level of safety for everybody, and also that level of choice? You had mentioned coercion, right? And violence is really just kind of the full extension of coercion, right? It's just
Absolutely.
the continuum. Violence is manipulative, but violence that involves fists or feet, that is certainly on the other end of the continuum of violence, right? And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's something that I certainly have learned from being younger to now, is that abuse comes in so many different forms. It's not just physical or sexual. There's all, and often psychological abuse is far more damaging than physical abuse. And I say that because I've been hit before, and I can, I don't need to flame more on that. I'm talking from personal experience. I don't know. I've never been sexually assaulted, so I can't say for sure. But I do know that I have learned in talking with people and witnessing things in the world that human beings have an almost limitless capacity for two things: to love people and to hurt people.
Well said, Brother Scott. Hey, Sheila just comments that emotional and financial are certainly two ways of violence, or that it could be used as violence, right?
And control. I think anytime you get into coercion, like you said, you're talking about elements of control, and whether that's the dominant, whatever, using it to remain the dominant, whether it's an individual over another individual. And when it comes right down to it, I think that we're talking about control. And I know I was doing some research for our show, and I came across, I can't remember the name of the website, Canadian Wellness Together. Yeah. Wellness Together Canada. That's what it's called. So just wellnesstogether.ca. And it's a really interesting site. It's got a lot of, you can call them. They list numbers that you can call if you need help right now, depending on what the situation is.
There's never been more resources available. Like,
no,
I realize there's people that are hurting, suffering. There's challenges all over the place, but there's also never been more access to resources than now.
And absolutely, it's a first world problem that we have so many choices, and there's really no excuse for us not to get the help we need. Like in parts of the world, there are a lack of resources, and there are stigmatizations that we've largely somewhat dealt with in our society. I'll say somewhat because, not being a member of the majority, I haven't experienced many of them, right?
No.
But I do have loved ones, and I do have friends, and have witnessed people that have undergone quite horrible things here. And it does happen in our backyard, right? You've seen it. I've seen it. We've experienced it to some levels in our own lives. And it's much worse in other places. So, yes.
Scott, I got to jump in here and share one thing, because this is going to align exactly with your train of thought here. You're talking about coercion, force, that kind of a thing. It's really kind of about taking away autonomy and choice from another human being, right?
Yeah.
To somehow manipulate or say, this is how you have to do this, right? And my friend, James, who I want you to meet, you haven't met him yet. My
Not
friend
yet.
James from Pincher Creek, he has this thing that I'm really enamored with. It's dominion versus communion. And so
Right.
dominion is, if you think of a colonizing type effort, that's the example of dominion, and that's the pattern that we've been following by identifying, oh, these people, well, no, they're not real people because look at the color of their skin, can't be real people. And these people, well, they're not real people. And these, oh, they're females, can't be real people. So that whole colonizing thing, that these, we're going to outline these people and these who we're going to control in these ways, right? And so then what's communion? Communion, it's, I know the religious connotation sounds maybe people feel uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, the same.
But the communion in a non-religious sense is connection, collaboration, working together, serving each other's needs. That's what communion is, right?
That's the religious meaning too.
Yeah, okay.
At its base. Yeah, it is. So yeah, I think those are really good ways to look at it.
Yes.
I think that often the need to control is built into us, and it's not always evil. And we've talked about this before.
It's your ego is your need to control, not on the best part of yourself would not want to control somebody else. I don't think.
No, but you're a dad and I'm a dad, right? And
yes.
So we think of our kids, and I'm just at that stage right now. I hope the twins aren't listening, and I know they're well, and I'll hear about it later. But they're at the stage in their life where they want to make their own decisions and they want to get out there and do their own stuff. And I support that 100%. I love them completely with every fiber of my being, and I would do anything for them. But I would also rather I suffered than they suffered. And if I've gone through something, boy, I want to stop them from going through that pain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And that conflict you get into as a parent, where you don't want to control your kids, but you're desperate for them not to suffer something that you suffered yourself. So,
especially some of us, Scott, who are slow learners, and we have to hurt ourselves before we get it figured out. Oh yeah, don't do that anymore. Yeah.
You and I are card-carrying members of that club. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Sheila also has another comment. Many people don't leave the situation due to fear. Abusers will threaten to hurt those the victim loves as a way to regain control. Victim don't seek help outside as a result, and that's for sure common. I understand, Sheila, and you're entirely right. And this course that I took called Real Talk said that often it takes 7 attempts to reveal that somebody's experiencing violence and get the help they need in order to leave a violent relationship. 7 times over how many years, right? So it's like a very, very difficult process. And that's a high risk scenario when they're leaving that violent situation. Often that can be where they're severely assaulted or dead, right? That's the retaliation, right? So yeah, I understand it's a very intricate, complicated situation, but the solution to getting the person who's using violence and the person who's experiencing violence separate, that's not that complicated. We got to be able to do that.
There is a further complication to that you just touched on, Al, and psychologically, our brains always try to make whatever situation we're in okay. Mm-hmm. And our mind's job is to balance us, right? So if you are missing a limb, your brain will adjust so that you can do the things you need to do as much as it can. If you are used to an environment of violence, then your brain adjusts, the psychology adjusts itself to normalizing that situation and that behavior. And there's tons of psychology that backs this up. You can look it up. I've certainly looked at it. My point is that often people that find themselves in an abusive relationship, they need to go through a healing process. We've been talking about healing the abuser, but the abused also need to go through a process where they realize that wasn't a normal situation they're in, because often people in that situation return to that situation or even another similar situation.
Because that's what they know. That's what they learned, right? I met this gentleman, his name's Lyle. And basically every day that he was home, his mother would cuff him on the side of the head and berate him for being a useless piece of shit. Every day, smack, hey, you piece of crap, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so if that's what your learned parenting is, when you become a parent, is that the pattern you follow? Maybe, if that's all you know.
And if that's what you associate with being a good parent, because something in us drives us to love our parents, even when they are not doing the best thing for us. In the same way that as parents, we're really driven to love our children. And it's often hard to admit that your children have a problem or that your children have done something that was wrong or bad. There's a really complicated psychology that goes on when you're talking about relationships. And I just wanted to bring it up because I know that often there's help for the abused in terms of dealing with the pain and the physical damage and psychological damage of rejection, but also on establishing that what normal behavior is and what normal love and what normal relationships are. Like, all people fight, all relationships have bad days and bad times and, disagreements. But it's not normal then to take that to abuse or, extensive measures of cohesion, like we're talking about, coercion, to control the other person or to hurt them, to keep one's dominion, as you said it before, over that person. So I think it's always good that if we strive to have communion with each other, and let ourselves be driven by that purpose, and judge yourself, right? When you're doing something, is this putting me in communion with that person, or am I struggling for domination over that person?
Yeah, and it's actually really everything if you think about it. If I'm going and
Absolutely.
I'm having a conversation with you, and let's say I'm talking about something because I want to convince you that you need to buy an insurance product. Let's pretend, right?
Let's
So
pretend. Yeah.
then am I coercing you? Maybe. If instead it's not about me, it's not to meet my need in any way. If instead I'm looking for what you need and I'm trying to meet your need, entirely different conversation, even though we're having the same conversation. You know what I mean? It's my intent. If my intent is to serve you, my intent is to make your life better, my intent is to help you with one of your needs. Hallelujah. That's makes life pretty easy, right?
But it does go back to that parenting thing, right? When I was the kid, I thought, boy, my parents are so controlling, and why are they always telling me what to do? And now that I'm a parent, I'm like, wow, they were just loving me and trying to keep me from getting hurt and making the mistakes they made. And all of this takes a lot of sensitivity, right? There's no cut and dry. This is, this person's wrong, this person's right. It is, I think, about a continual struggle and evolution. And one of the things that doesn't exist so much in our popular culture is this idea that life is a continual struggle. We're always looking for life to become easy, right? When I get a job, my life will be easier. When I get married, my life will be better and easier. When I, etc. We're always looking for easy, but is that really what life is about? Or is life about struggle? Is it about growth? Because we grow from struggle. We don't grow from easy, right?
Yes. We grow from, I don't know if you have to necessarily have struggle, but you do have to have something to apply your talents towards. So I kind of think of it this way. If I have, if two people, no, if one person has a focus that they want to achieve some kind of a goal, they want to make the community a better place, they're going to focus on that. That's going to engage their talents and their time and their imagination and their intuition to try and move that forward, right? So
But
I
you
could
could
do
call
the,
that a struggle, right? It's a semantic
okay,
argument. And
fair
I
enough,
know,
fair enough. So you're saying that goal is a struggle. So,
well,
right?
what you endure, what you go through. And I did a lot of studying on this when we were looking at Islamic culture, and I had an opportunity to speak with a lot of imams and Muslim scholars. And the word jihad, when it's used in its original context, it means the daily struggle of moving yourself closer to God.
Oh,
right? In the same way that, medieval Christians talked about, toiling on earth to move yourself closer to heaven. And so
okay.
when I say struggle, life is a struggle, I'm not talking about, life should be painful and nasty, but it should be about overcoming things that are difficult or are not easy. In our shooting club in SAFE, we always say, if you don't win, you learn. When you win, you don't often learn that much. It means that everything went exactly as you had planned it to go. When something goes wrong and you try to overcome that, that's when you learn or when you struggle. So I think semantics get involved a lot. And I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, I understand, Scott. What I guess why I kind of wanted to jump in about that. Part of the man box, the whole man box, the way that you and I and
Yeah.
every other male has been conditioned, is that men power through pain. Men endure pain. Men don't ask for help. Those kind of things. So if part of your psyche is you endure pain, I think you go find pain for you to endure through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that's not part of your thought process, if your thought process, I contribute, I enjoy, I love, I share, these are the things how you're navigating your life, then I don't think you're. What am I trying to get at there? Did you
No,
get my
I
point?
think it's a really good point, because it's what we're talking about earlier. You
Yes.
and I are both sensitive, caring people, and we're out here trying to do the best we can. We both make mistakes. We both made mistakes. But we're talking now about perception, right? So when I hear struggle, I think of it in the terms of my academic background, where jihad and struggle and those things are a process that one grows and learns from. It's not necessarily enduring pain. I
Right.
said of something else, where
Yes.
but you perceive that in a slightly different way. And I think that's why we have to be really sensitive to each other, that often we can be saying the same thing, but we get caught up in how the other person's trying to express themselves.
That is well said, Scott Sweetman. And look at you and me are on the same wavelength, and we didn't quite get that. I didn't quite get right
Well,
what you were saying. So
yeah.
that's great. I
No,
appreciate that.
and I think that that's the hope that we can leave people with, right? You and I've been friends for years. We've talked about everything under the sun, and still, sometimes we have to back up and say, "Hold on here, buddy. What are you trying to say?" Because I'm getting a whole different vibe than what I think you're trying to say. And sorry.
So the hope is that we need to be open for the other lessons we can learn from the beautiful other people in our lives. Is that what the hope?
That's part of it. The other thing is that if you're a victim or if you're an abuser, there is so much help out there for you now, and be brave.
211. If you're triggered right now, call 211. They're there to help you.
Yeah.
Go, Scott. Sorry.
And do it. It's not the only shameful thing is to do nothing, because
Yes.
we have the resources in our society. We have the professionals, the people that care. No one, regardless, and I know this is hard to say because we look at, like you said, there's groups of people that are still falling through the cracks and aren't getting taken care of. So, it's slightly entitled of me to say that there's someone out there for everyone, but there is. And, it might be harder for some people to get out there and make that connection, but somebody can help them. Somebody can dial 211 on their phone and make that call for them if they need to. Get help.
Get help. Yes, that's for sure. If you need help, get help. Ask for help. If you're in a position where you can offer help, offer help. Let's be really, really easy to offer help and to accept help.
But
Scott,
when you offer help, right, be gentle and be aware that that can be interpreted in so many different ways, and all you can do is your best, right?
well said. Well said. Yes. So I guess what Scott's getting at, don't make any presumptions that might unintentionally throw guilt or shame towards that person. Meet them where they're at and just say, hey, are you having a challenge right now that may be something I can assist you with? Maybe there's some resources I know of, but it's their life that you're trying to aid them. You're not coercing them to a path of action. That be a fair statement, Scott?
It is. And I think that sometimes people don't accept help because they're not ready for it yet.
That's true.
And you shouldn't take that personally either.
Nope. If somebody's not ready, they're not ready. All we can do is offer. If we have something that we have to offer, we have some time, we have some money, we have some love and compassion, offer it. And if they accept it, that's great. But you know what? I feel if I make that offer, I feel fantastic just for making the offer, even if they don't take me up on it. That's the beauty of mirror neurons.
So we've done some takeaway. We're going to let people go a little bit early from tonight's homily. And the first one is check out the Safe at Home program, right? Find out what's going on in our community. Get involved if you can. If you're not in a situation and not part of that, find out how you can help somebody that is. Check out the website I mentioned is simply wellnesstogether.ca. Lots of opportunities there. And if right now you're triggered or you're in a bad situation, call Al. What's that number?
211.
Hallelujah. That's our message of hope tonight.
Keep yourself well. I hope tomorrow you are healthy and happy and doing stuff you love with people you love. Anything to add, Brother Scott?
Perfect. Nothing more to that. That's